Welcome back to the Void. Today, I decided that I will be covering Yggdrasil, the World Tree. For now, I put the Rune King Thor video on hold just to focus on this video primarily, as the structure and scaling for Yggdrasil plays an important part in the Rune King Thor video. Just like the World Tree itself, the scaling becomes ever so large, and that's why in this video, I'll cover the scaling for it and provide any necessary scans to back that up. Let's begin with the basics, covering the core 10 realms. And yes, there are 10 realms. It's clarified by Odin himself that there are indeed 10 realms on the World Tree. It's also further stated by Odin that these realms are essentially stories, and Malekith gives us a breakdown of what these realms are. So let's start with the mainland itself, Asgard, home of the Aesir, later forming the Asgardians with the Vanir. Along with Asgard comes the creations of the following realms within it. Valhalla, realm of the honoured dead, which is distinct from Asgard yet closely related to it. Nornheim, home to the Norns, and the realm below, home to the savage rock trolls, and it's just located right beneath Asgard. We then have Vanaheim, home of the Vanir, the sister race of the Asgardians. Heaven, home of the angels. This is a realm that Odin once cut off, however both Thor and Loki restored it later on. Jotunheim, home of the Jotun, or more commonly known as the Frost Giants. Alfheim, home to the Light Elves. Vilir, dubbed the Darkfields. This is home of the Dwarves. We then have Midgard, or as we commonly know it, Earth. Svartalfheim, known as the Dark World. This realm houses the Dark Elves. Muspelheim, a realm of eternal fire and home of the fire demons. Niflheim, a realm of the dishonored dead, a cold land made of ice and mist. And within it we have Hell, a region where the dead that are neither honoured nor dishonoured reside. These 10 realms are essentially each their own universe, and this is brought up by the quantum cosmologist Erik Solvang, saying that the realms are essentially universes, complex, discrete, and fully formed. There is also a mention regarding the infinite realms, however, we'll touch upon that shortly. I mentioned not too long ago about the infinite realms on the World Tree. And at first, this is somewhat known as a possibility by the ideas of Erik. However, further down the line, we get more information by Baldur himself, and this becomes reality. Yggdrasil contains an infinite amount of worlds throughout its entirety, and using the information that we got from Erik earlier, we're able to get the idea that these infinite realms on Yggdrasil are indeed just an infinite amount of universes. Or if we choose to use the words of Odin himself, we can class these universes as narrative ones. And with this, so far, we can place the World Tree at 2A or Multiversal Plus for now. As a side note, the definition I'm going to be using for high hyperversal comes from character sets and profile, and this is due to their definition giving more information on the tiering system and what distinguishes something from being 1A and 1B. So from here on out, this is where the scaling for Yggdrasil becomes a bit more complex. But with the information that I've got, I'll be doing my best at breaking down this scaling and making sure that by the end of it, you, the viewers, are able to grasp how the World Tree can achieve such power. Now let's reference our favourite quantum cosmologist, Erik. He goes on to talk about how the World Tree and what it encompasses in terms of its structures and how it's beyond viewpoints such as Einstein-Rosen, Morris-Thorne, and the quantum Brane cosmological theories. And from here, I'll give a quick rundown for each viewpoint and essentially where they would be scaling to in order for Yggdrasil to scale above them. So let's begin with Einstein and Rosen's theory, more commonly known as bridge theory. This is essentially a wormhole theory that proposes the existence of quote-unquote bridges throughout space-time. These bridges would essentially connect two different points in space-time, allowing for a shortcut to be made, reducing the travel of time and distance. Morris-Thorne's theory takes the same concept as Einstein and Rosen's, essentially saying the theory correlates with wormholes being used to travel between two different points in space and time, so there's no massive distinction between the two. Quantum Brane Cosmology. As you can tell, this is an entire cosmology, so there's aspects of it that I do need to break down, and I will do my best to do so. But to give a basic insight into what it is, it's essentially a cosmology in particle physics that relates to theories such as superstring, string, and M-theory. The Brane theory essentially uses these different theories to represent an entire cosmology, So to better understand said cosmology, I'll do my best once more to simply explain these theories for us to understand. Starting with string theory, this essentially presents the idea that there are more spatial dimensions rather than the 3 we already know. Arguably, string theory suggests that there are a total range of 10 to 26 dimensions, and the idea of 26 dimensions stems from bosonic string theory, whilst most common ones nowadays say that there are only just 10 to 11. Moving on to superstring theory. And simply put, it's near enough the same as a standard string theory. The core difference is that superstring theory accounts for fermions and bosons, where the original string theory contained bosons. To help model the idea of gravity in this case, this theory uses supersymmetry to help define it. Finally, we have M theory. This takes the different string theories and places them as smaller pieces to match a bigger puzzle, that being the 11th dimension. Much isn't known regarding this theory in particular and what capabilities it might have in the near future, but this is what we know so far. This, I've given what I feel to be a basic explanation to the 3 different theories. I'll leave a link down below to a video where Michio Kaku covers the multiverse having 11 dimensions if you feel as though my explanations weren't sufficient enough. I'll also leave relevant links in the description of where else I did my research for this section. Moving back onto the Brane Cosmology. It presents that along with the brain there is a bulk, and with this bulk there is hyperspace. If these additional dimensions are compact, essentially idealized by the previous theories, then the observed universe contains that extra dimension, where no appropriate point of reference can be made of the bulk. However, within the bulk model, some of these extra dimensions become extensive and have the possibility of becoming infinite, with other branes moving within this bulk. Now that the entire science behind these theories are out of the way, you hopefully grasped an understanding of the structures of Yggdrasil and how truly powerful and wonderful they can be. During the arc of Everything Burns, Mr. Wilson had struck a deal with Seth and ended up giving technology to him, which was being used to destroy the Yggdrasil. During this panel we get to know that the other world is essentially just another place on the branches of Yggdrasil. And what does this mean? Well, it's further explained to Loki, and he uses a deck of cards to show a better example of this, that because other worlds connects to the entire multiverse, essentially destroying or affecting Yggdrasil would lead to a chain that would also go to the effect of the rest of the multiverse itself. But this isn't just the only part of Otherworlds that matters. Due to the sidereal string in Otherworlds, essentially an intersection of reality from allowing access to any point along the ties of creation together, this would include an area like the negative zone / the subspace, an area that was said to contain an infinite amount of higher dimensions. There is more Asgardian evidence that would support this entire section. Heimdall is capable of looking into the negative zone and subspace, and it is said that he can see all of time and space laid out before him on the world tree. And this essentially shows that Yggdrasil encompasses these high 1B structures and connects to other worlds that we previously had not known about or even just thought about. Now, let's talk about Seth. And no, this isn't Seth the programmer coming into comics and doing some wild shit, but this is the brother of Osiris, Seth. He's out for Yggdrasil, and even trying to destroy all the infinite planes of time and space by just taking out the main root of Yggdrasil itself. And my interpretation behind this can support the argument about the infinite higher dimensions and the scaling relating to Yggdrasil itself. Now, let's move on to the scaling and the relation that the Celestials have with Yggdrasil itself. And for those that don't know, this is going to be covering characters such as the Living Tribunal, bits of Galactus, Eternity, and Infinity. And for those of you that actually don't know who the character is or much about him, the Living Tribunal is essentially an entity that has existed as long as the Marvel multiverse itself. It's also stated on occasions that the Living Tribunal always comes with the birth of each multiverse. Now, you might be wondering, how does any of this actually come back to the World Tree or correlate with the World Tree? Well, it's shown that when all matter and energy collapses onto itself, the World Tree would essentially recreate the multiverse along with beings such as the Galactus and the Living Tribunal. To paint a picture on how powerful the Living Tribunal must be, we can argue for the hierarchy of these elite beings within Marvel, when in some depictions the Living Tribunal is stronger than Infinity and Eternity, and along this there's a quote-unquote representation of the chain where the Living Tribunal is placed at the top above beings such as Galactus, Infinity and Eternity. Now, the reason why I quote that hierarchy chain is because that chain doesn't validate anything into the current canon with Eternity and Infinity and other beings. Now, just like Bob Ross, I'm going to paint another canvas for you, and this time it's to show the powers of Eternity and Infinity. Before the 8th multiverse, where Eternity essentially became the entire multiverse itself, and scaled well above the beings such as the Living Tribunal, etc. in the hierarchy, Eternity was said to embody the totality of existence on all planes and levels. And again, from previous showings, I've displayed how the Marvel Multiverse essentially contains an infinite amount of higher dimensions. Regarding Infinity, she remains to be equal to Eternity, and as it goes, she is him, he is her, they are the two in one. And with this, we've got the idea of how powerful Infinity really is. Conclude. The scaling that I have provided before you is the scaling that I believe consistently outlines the tiering for Yggdrasil. I do want to note that in no way do I condone any of my viewers presenting my arguments from the video as their own argument. To finalize the entire video, I believe that the Yggdrasil scales to high 1B and that the arguments you may be seeing on VSBW regarding low 1A are essentially just more consistent scaling for the high 1B tiers. I do hope you enjoyed the video. Again, I hope that you guys understood the scaling and I broke it down well enough. If you have any questions regarding the video, leave a comment down below or join my Discord server and we can talk about it there. Be on the lookout for the Rune King Thor video. Script's almost done and I'm excited to show it to you all. So like and subscribe and take care.